Hello, welcome back here in the CAYDEN'S WEATHER CENTER. It is September 25th, 2024. Right now, we're paying attention here to Hurricane Helene. It was a tropical storm earlier this morning, but now it is a hurricane, and we're continuing to watch this storm move off to the north-northwest. The question is when will that turn happen? Well, we just got the 2 p.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center, so we're going to keep an eye out, obviously, on this. As you can clearly see, the storm is getting very well organized so far today. It has a pretty big improvement to what it looked like kind of yesterday. As this storm continues to push up over here, we'll eventually take that turn. The question is, where does that turn occur, and will it go off to, the Florida Panhandle? Or will it go off into the Florida Bend, as we still have some of those models bringing it into the Florida Bend? So a lot to be paying attention to very, very closely here. As we can clearly see, though, on the satellite, looking very, very nice in the center here, forming a well eye as it's almost reaching up into Category 2 status here. And we'll see that later on. Probably tonight we could be seeing a Category 2, and that's what the National Hurricane Center is anticipating. Taking a look here at the IR satellite, we can clearly see some pretty big deep convection did blow up a lot this morning. Now trying to reform some of that convection. That shows that this storm is intensifying here as it continues to push off over here to the north-northwest. We're going to continue to see that right now as that, still waiting for that turn. That's our biggest concern right now, is when that turn could happen, because that could change a little bit more of the track a little bit. And if we're curious, you haven't seen the National Hurricane Center cone, here it is. Obviously, most of those tropical storm force winds are on the eastern side of the storm. Hurricane warnings will still continue on for the Yucatan. But as you can clearly see, all of the state of Florida mostly, except for this little tiny part here, the Florida Panhandle, is under a tropical storm warning. Hurricane warnings here for the Bend and into the Florida Panhandle. Even some hurricane warnings reaching up here into Georgia. Tropical storm watches going into northern Georgia, going into parts of South Carolina and North Carolina, as well as the storm will be pretty strong, even though it's going to be inland here. That's why we have that so far up there. And we still have hurricane watches here for parts of the western coast of Florida. That is including the Tampa Bay, Sarasota. Just something to be paying attention to, because we could see hurricane conditions all depending on the track. If it pushes a little bit more off to the east, that could change this into a hurricane warning. We'll have to keep an eye out, obviously, on that very, very closely. Taking a look here at the tropical storm wind speed probabilities, obviously the pink is the 100% chance you're guaranteed to get tropical storm wind speed probabilities. The arrival time, we can clearly see already we're already seeing some bands kind of head into the Keys and parts of maybe even south or southern Florida. So we're seeing a little bit of that tropical storm conditions could possibly start later on tonight here, heading into south central Florida. Then Thursday at 2 a.m. we could see it just off the coast here of Tampa Bay, and then Thursday morning we could be seeing this storm over here in the Florida Panhandle. So the storm is, according to this model and the recent update here at the 11 a.m. advisory, is currently going a little bit quicker than what we were anticipating. So that is something to be paying attention to as well. No matter what, power outages are going to be our biggest concern right now, and that's going to be something pretty big. But our biggest concern, obviously, too, we have the storm surge, and unfortunately it does seem like we're having an update from the storm surge, and this is my first time seeing this as well. But now here in the Bend area, 12 to 18 feet here of storm surge could be expected. So this could be absolutely astronomical to the storm surge in this pink area. Just north of the Tampa Bay, 8 to 12 feet. And then the Tampa Bay is 5 to 8 feet, which is nothing to mess around still with, as the Tampa Bay could be very, very prone to some of that water, as kind of this whole area right here is surrounded by water. That could be pushing a lot of water into Tampa. So something to be paying attention to as we go on. But now we're watching 12 to 18 feet over here in the Florida Bend all the way into the Florida Panhandle. Apalachicola could be expecting 8 to 12 feet of storm surge, so that's still a lot. And then we head all the way over here to the western side, Mexico Beach here in Florida, 2 to 4 feet. So the more farther west you go, the more it's going to be less. But really the west coast of Florida needs to be paying attention to this very, very closely here. And if you take a look here at the potential for storm surge flooding, this is a little bit of an interesting situation. I'm going to kind of go a little bit quickly here, but kind of can see these red areas right here. That is where we're obviously going to be above 9 feet here for that storm surge, and that's obviously, this is the area where we're going to be seeing 12 to 18 feet. Citrus County, we kind of can see a little bit maybe over here above 9 feet. And then we head down over here into the Tampa Bay. We can see some not as bad as I would say as it was kind of earlier this morning expected, having some of that orange in there, but still yellow greater than 3 feet above ground, blue greater than 1 foot, above ground, so something to pay attention to as we go on. And then obviously down here in southwestern Florida, kind of not as big of a concern obviously as the Florida Bend, so that's something to pay attention to very, very closely here. Taking a look here at what we're kind of looking at with the ensembles, because the ensembles are something to be paying attention to. The spaghetti models, the main operational runs are very, very tight on exact location, but the ensembles, we still have a pretty kind of big spread, and that's why I'm saying it's going to matter really when we see that turn happen. And the turn for the northeast, the northeast, whatever the National Hurricane Center is expecting right now, I believe it's the northeast turn, that could play a factor in where this goes. You kind of can still see a pretty good amount of those eastern models here from the main operational run. We can clearly see, or the mean model at least, is still bringing it kind of on the eastern side of that cone, and will bring it into the Florida Bend. We still also have some over here that are on the western side that could bring it on the western side of the cone. So the big question is obviously, when does that turn happen? This is the GFS ensembles. Taking a look at the Canadian ensembles, a little bit more of a tighter spread there, or a little bit more of a tighter kind of where it's going to go, but not as far east as the GFS model. That's more sticking with the panhandle here. The intensity forecast, as you clearly can see, the National Hurricane Center bringing it up into Category 3 status here, almost Category 4 status, and we'll see about that at the 5 p.m. advisory. As there's only specific models bringing it into Category 4. We can already see one model, but we could be most likely already seeing in Category 3 once it goes up, obviously, into the Gulf of Mexico, because we know how the Gulf of Mexico is. GFS main operational run, this is the 12Z, we can clearly see, has been obviously pretty consistent here, but more keeping it on the Florida Bend area. So a little bit more on that eastern part of the cone here. We can clearly see the GFS will bring that in. A lot of strong storms off to its western side here, according to the GFS. But obviously that storm surge for the western coast of Florida will be something that we want to pay attention to very closely. And we're going to keep an eye out, obviously, on that, as the storm will continue to race off really to the north. So that's something to pay attention to. Taking a look here at the winds, look at that. All this right here, so pink winds right here, that's reaching possibly 64 to 80 miles an hour with those winds. That's something to pay attention to very, very closely. Then we keep an eye on this storm very closely as it continues to move off over here, kind of, to the northeast, but the GFS bringing it a little bit more different than the National Hurricane Center forecast. But that pink and light pink area right there, that reaches up into 90 to 110 mile an hour wind. So something to pay attention to when it comes to the GFS model. The Euro model kind of agreeing with the GFS, maybe a little bit more of a westward track, but the winds will most likely be the same here. Agreeing with the eastern side is going to be one of the most hammering sides here. We can clearly see that with the storm surge as well, so that's going to be something to pay attention to as we go on. And then a little bit more, according to the Euro, of a bigger wind field here on the eastern side for that stronger upper tropical storm force. So for the Euro model, still bringing in that pink over here into that Florida Bend region that could reach up to, once again, 90 to 110 miles an hour. So, but still, that kind of follows where the National Hurricane Center is saying, at least maybe a little bit more off to the eastern side, but majority of those winds are going to be on the eastern side no matter what here, according to these models. The HWRF model is one of the National Hurricane Center, hurricane models here. This is a hurricane model that the National Hurricane Center really pays attention to. This has a brand new run, 12Z. We can clearly see there's the west coast of Florida. There's Tampa Bay. We can clearly see some rain could possibly start to just push up into some of that storm surge around 2 p.m. tomorrow. But you can clearly see, obviously, the most hurricane force winds will kind of stay in this circle right here. 928 millibars here for the HWRF, so it's very something interesting. 918, that's very, very strong storms. But once again, that storm surge will continue on, even though with these bands, as that hurricane is continuing to move off the coast here. So even though if you live in Tampa Bay and the cone is all the way over here, or the storm's all the way up here, and you're still seeing that storm surge, that is expected. So this could be an overnight issue as well for the Tampa Bay region, as well as this continues to push up to the north. But 944 millibars going through central Georgia. That's a hurricane going through there. So Georgia could be expecting some hurricane, and that's why the hurricane warnings are out for central Georgia. The HMON model, we can clearly see pretty heavy rainfall still continuing. Same kind of area where the HWRF is saying, but 939 millibar hurricane here. That could be something. And then the same concept here, that storm surge will also continue on, even though the storm will be off to the north of these areas as well. So that's something to pay attention to. I want to head into windy.com here because this kind of gives us a representation for a little bit of areas for winds and what the forecast is saying from the Euro, the GFS, and the Icon, and all these models really down here on the right corner. So taking a look here at the wind. So this is the European model. We can clearly see there's our storm. This is the sustained winds according to the European model. We can clearly see over, this period of time, Spring Hill, Tampa reaching up 20s, in the upper 20s, Marco Island 40, Key West 42, and look at this, Key West is at 42 miles an hour, even though the storm's all the way over here. That just shows you that no matter what, we're going to see some tropical storm force winds all the way on the other coast of Florida, and that could also raise the wave heights as well on this side of the coast, so rip currents could be definitely something to be paying attention to. Then we head into around 12 p.m. here. We can see the winds obviously still gusting or pretty sustained of 39 miles an hour here at Key West. Still in the upper 30s over here on southwestern Florida, 40 miles an hour for Sarasota, so something to be paying attention to as we go on. Then we continue to pay attention to this as the storm will continue to move off over here to the north. You can see Jenna 43 miles an hour here with that winds, and that will really just gust up as well, 75 miles an hour right off the coast here, and that is when we'll start to see some hurricane force conditions. According to the Euro, will be Thursday night, so that's something to pay attention to very closely. GFS model saying a little bit more of a different scenario here. We'll go to the wind gust here shortly, but the GFS bringing it still very far out from the west coast here of Florida, but still bringing in 37 miles an hour for Key West. We can clearly see that. Marco Island 38, Cape Coral 39, Sarasota reaching 43, and this is tomorrow at 2 p.m., 37 for the Tampa Bay. Something to be paying attention to, with the Euro model and the GFS model having a little bit more of difference with the winds, the GFS thing a little bit stronger. Then we head into around 5 p.m., reaching up tropical storm sustained winds here in the Tampa Bay region and the west coast of Florida, and that's where we're going to start to see some of that continue on here in the Bend area, reaching up into those hurricane sustained winds going into tomorrow night as well. So taking a look here at the wind gust forecast here by the European model, we can clearly see 3 a.m. tomorrow morning, 57 miles an hour continuing on over here in the Keys, 44 in Marco Island. Sarasota is going to be reaching 33, Tampa 26, and as the storm continues to push up over here, we're going to see these numbers climb up here with the wind gust due to all of this really being east loaded here. So definitely the good news is that I would say is majority of these stronger winds are staying off the east coast of, or are staying off the coast here of western Florida, but you can clearly see Sarasota 64 miles an hour. The Key West is 58 miles an hour, even though the storm is all the way over here. Something to pay attention to. Marco Island 62, and then we go over here to 3 p.m. We can clearly see, easily see Naples is going to be at 60 miles an hour as well that I saw. 63 miles an hour for Tampa. Zooming in here, 71 for Sarasota for that wind gust, so possibly reaching up into hurricane force wind gust here for Sarasota. Then you head on up here, we're going to see some very, very strong wind gusts head up into the Bend area according to the European model. Then we see that reaching up into possibly even the hundreds according to this, and right there in that yellow 106 mile an hour wind gust. So we're obviously, and we could be possibly seeing it as higher as well. So something to really pay attention to with the wind gust as well, because that is also a big concern that we want to pay attention to. Heading into the GFS wind gust, though, we can clearly see Keys 49 here tonight at 11 p.m. Heading into tomorrow morning, we're going to see some of those wind gusts pick up. 49 miles an hour for the Keys right here, 54 for Cape Coral, 56 for Sarasota, 51 for Tampa, and that will all stay on the eastern side here. But I would say maybe this, they're kind of agreeing with each other for the wind gust forecast. And also, watch for the storm surge as well. Will be when the opportunity is for the storm surge to pick up. The stronger the winds, obviously, the stronger the storm surge could possibly be. Then we're seeing up to maybe 70 miles an hour in Spring Hill for that, as the GFS brings it in maybe a little bit on that eastern side of the cone here. That could bring a little bit more of issues here for the west coast of Florida. So that's something to pay attention to. But once again, the wind gust could reach up Cedar Keys 92 miles an hour, and this will be at 8 p.m. tomorrow night, where we're starting to see some possible hurricane force wind gust and sustained winds heading into the Bend area according to the GFS. So something to pay attention to here. Make sure to follow the National Hurricane Center and your National Weather Service for your local updates here on Hurricane Helene. The storm expected to rapidly intensify, so it could be something pretty big to be paying attention to. So please make sure you are paying attention to the storm as it continues. And we also need to pay attention to the forecast and the winds and the rainfall that could happen here in the Florida Panhandle. But really, if you live in these areas right here, still model spread is still continuing. So please be making sure you're paying attention to this, and also the National Hurricane Center updates very frequently. So thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and make sure to follow my X page down in the description here for more frequent updates on this tropical system. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.